I will be truthful and mention that before a rigid search, I had the opinion Jewish people were having between their brains. Primarily this is because all I knew of Jewish people was that they paid father very much currency in order to make vacations from America to Ukraine. I was of the opinion that the past is past, and like all that is not now, it should remain buried along the side of our memories. But this was before the commencement of our very rigid search. Before I encountered the collector, Jonathan Safran Foer.
In the movie Everything Is Illuminated, Elijah Wood's character Jonathan was seeking answers to the questions, who am I and where do I come from? As I was studying and preparing for my Bar Mitzvah, I was wondering about these same questions myself. My dad helped me to find some of the answers to those questions. He searched the Ellis Island records for our ancestors, and he found the ship that my great-grandmother, Sarah, came over to this country on, from Timashpol in the Ukraine area of Russia, near Odessa. My great-grandmother emigrated to the United States in 1914 when she was only 11 years old. She was younger than I am today, and she was an orphan. It is believed that her parents were killed in a pogrom in Russia. Accompanying my great-grandmother on her voyage was a woman from her town by the name of Katie Kurland and her daughter, Rivka. My dad believes that we have Katie Kurland to thank for helping my great-grandmother escape the pogroms in Russia and very possibly saving her life.
And these are your family?
Yeah. My grandmother gave me this. That's my grandfather, Safran. It was taken during the war.
Well, it's you.
I've heard that.
And this is Augustina?
Yeah. My mother said that he never would have made it to America if it weren't for her.
And she's from Trachenbrod?
Or somewhere near there. This is Koki, my grandmother's shtetl.
Shtetl?
Это местечко.
It's Yiddish, it means village. It doesn't seem to be far from Trachenbrod. That's why I was thinking it might be called Sofievka now.
Why do you make such a rigid search?
I guess I just wanted to see where my grandfather grew up. Where I would be now if he hadn't come to America.
You would be Ukrainian like me? Only not like me, because you'd be a farmer from some unimpressive town, and I am from Odessa.
I see.
And did your grandparents ever return to Ukraine?
God, no. My grandmother would go crazy if she knew I was here.
Why?
Well, she didn't think it was safe. She said that before the war, Ukraine was just as bad as Berlin. Jews weren't exactly popular in Ukraine. When the Nazis invaded, she actually thought it would be an improvement.
Who told you this?
My grandmother.
Why did she say this?
I don't know, it's just how she felt.
Дед, он говорит, что украинцы до войны антисемитами были. Это что, правда? Дед.
My great-grandmother was adopted by the Kurland family, and her name was changed from Sarah Schickman to Sarah Kurland. They settled in Hartford, Connecticut. The Kurlands later moved to Pittsburgh, where my great-grandmother met my great-grandfather, Harry Cohen. They were married in 1922. Exactly 1 year later, their first daughter, Ethel, was born. Her little sister, my grandma Betty, sitting in the chair beside her, was born 2 years later. Harry and Sarah had 4 children, including my grandma, Betty, my great-aunts Ethel and Faye, and my great-uncle Sandy. I'm so glad that my grandma Betty, my great-aunt Faye, and my great-uncle Sandy are here to celebrate with us tonight.
Звучал недолго голос нежный, и снились милые черты. Звучал недолго голос нежный, и сколько пряталась, как милое видение, как вечная сна.
Простите за беспокойство.
Какое беспокойство в такой день. А вы откуда?
Из Одессы.
В Одессе я не бывала.
Обязательно надо побывать. А вы слыхали про местечко под названием Трачемброд? Мне сказали, это где-то здесь рядом. Простите, я не хотел бы отнимать у вас время. Вы слыхали про Трачемброд? Простите за беспокойство. Может быть, вы знаете кого-то на этой фотографии? Может быть, вы знаете кого-то с этой фотографией? Может быть, вы знаете кого-то с этой фотографией?
Я так долго ждала.
Мы ищем Трачемброд.
Вы на месте? Это я.
Dad conducted his own urgent search, and 2 weeks ago, he made a breakthrough when he obtained this rare photograph of the Polonsky family. He said that it was like finding buried treasure. It is a photo of my great-grandfather, Isidore Paull, with his entire family, including his brothers Leon and Joseph, his sisters Fanny, Pauline, Vera, Ray, and Ruth, and his parents Nathan and Bessie. Dad said that it was the first time that he had ever seen a picture of his great-grandparents, who are sitting on either side of the girl in the white dress. Dad believes that this photo was taken around 1921. Dad also located the records for the ship that my great-great-grandfather, Nathan Polonsky, and his family emigrated to the United States on in 1914. The ship, the Dwinsk, was torpedoed and sunk by a German submarine 4 years later. The ship manifest shows that my great-great-grandfather was accompanied on his voyage by his wife, Basira, their 3 daughters, Fanya, Polya, and Reza, and their son, Leba. They emigrated from Cherkasy, which is near Kiev, and they settled in New York City. Their American names became Nathan, Bessie, Fanny, Pauline, Ray, and Leon. According to my family oral and written history, my great-great-grandfather is a direct descendant of the Shepoler Zeta, a disciple of the Baal Shem Tov, who was the founder of Hasidic Jewry. My great-grandfather, Itzhok Polonsky, was not on the Dwinsk with the rest of his family. He was the oldest of the Polonsky children, and he emigrated to the United States 9 years before the rest of his family did, in 1905. He made the voyage by himself when he was 21 years old. He departed from Glasgow, Scotland, on the ship for Nesia. My great-grandfather listed his last place of residence as Stanislaw, Austria. It is believed that he moved to Austria to avoid being drafted into the Russian army. However, his younger brother Leon did serve in the Russian army before emigrating to America. This photo, taken around 1913, shows him with the officers in his regiment. That is him in the very front of the photo, on the left. Like many Russian immigrants of that day, my great-grandfather Americanized his name, and Itzhak Polonsky became Louis Isidore Paull. He settled in Gallitzin, Pennsylvania, where he met and married my great-grandmother, Mary Gilman. Later they moved to Crescent, then Altoona, and finally Pittsburgh, where my great-grandfather opened a jewelry store. They had 7 children, including my grandfather, Mel, his 3 brothers, Phil, Harold, and Herbert, and his 3 sisters, Bertha, Ella, and Lenore. It was a large, spirited, closely knit family, and my dad talks about his wonderful memories of growing up in Pittsburgh, surrounded by his many aunts, uncles, and cousins. It seemed like there was always a family dinner, birthday party, Jewish holiday, card game, or celebration of some kind going on. My grandfather, Mel, and his brothers Philip and Herbert served our country in World War II in the U.S. Army Air Force. My grandfather was an airplane mechanic and tail gunner on B-17 bombers. The name of his plane was the Dorothy D. He and his brothers flew many missions over Germany during the war. The next generation of Pauls who served in the armed forces is represented by Herbert's son, Erwin Paull, who served our country in the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam War. Continuing this proud tradition into the 3rd generation of Pauls is Lee and Deborah's son, Harrison Paull, who just completed his first year of training at the U.S. Air Force Academy. On the Cohen side of my family, my Uncle Sandy served his country as an Army captain in a MASH unit during the Korean War. And on the Raleigh side of my family, my grandfather James Raleigh and his brother Jack also served our country in World War II in the U.S. Navy. Jim saw action in the Pacific Theater and in North Africa. Grandma Edna and Papa Jim were married in August 1951 and were married for 52 years. They had 2 children, my mom Kara and her sister Tara. I remember my Papa Jim. We used to visit him and Grandma Edna in Virginia, and he was at my brother Justin's Bar Mitzvah in 2003. He passed away later that same year. I was just a baby when Papa Mel passed away, so I don't really remember him, but my brother Justin does. People said that I look a lot like him. My dad says that I often remind him of Papa Mel. When he says that, I know that he means it as a great compliment. My dad told me that Papa Mel loved to play football when he was a kid, so maybe we are a lot alike. Grandma Betty and Papa Mel were married in Pittsburgh in June 1947 and were married for 48 years. They had 2 children, my dad and his sister, Lynn. After Papa Mel passed away, my grandmother remarried a very nice man by the name of Ben Goodman. As fate would have it, Ben Goodman happens to be the grandson of Katie Kurland, the compassionate woman who adopted my great-grandmother, Sarah, after she was orphaned in Russia. So now I know a little bit more about my mom's family. And I know a little bit more about my dad's family, and I am beginning to realize that I am connected to all those who came before me.
I have reflected many times upon our rigid search. It has shown me that everything is illuminated in the light of the past. It is always along the side of us, on the inside, looking out. Like you say, inside out. Jonathan, in this way, I will always be along the side of your life, and you will always be along the side of mine. Our families will be with us, and our families' families. Your grandfather, and perhaps, in some way, my grandfather as well.
Now I know a little bit more about who I am and where I come from. I come from a line of courageous, hardworking people who came to this country seeking freedom from oppression. They came with almost nothing, and they built a better life for their families. Their children became doctors and teachers, salesmen and soldiers, surgeons and scientists. They fought bravely for their country, and they still serve it today. I am thankful to have grown up in a loving home with wonderful parents who love me, and a big brother who is my best friend. I am blessed to be living in a country where I am free to speak my mind, practice my religion, and pursue my dreams. I am proud of my Jewish and Irish heritage, and I will remember and honor those who came before me and made all of this possible. I am Joshua Paull, and today I become a young man for whom everything is illuminated.